To defeat the desert god, they first had to conquer the desert. Under the setting sun, they reached the peak. At the top stood the door to the cosmos, and Horus sought help from his grandpa, the sun god. Horus desperately wanted help, but with just one eye he couldn't transform into flight mode. He knelt and silently prayed to the sun god for strength. Soon, Horus' prayers took effect. With sun god's power, he transformed into a bird-headed man with golden wings there. He and Beck embarked on a space journey, arriving at the spaceship floating in the cosmos. The mission was to find Grandpa Sun's help, but the sun god was far too busy to cater to their needs. At the Sire, he was busy directing the solar routes while also fending off chaotic beasts invading Earth with solar energy. After some frantic multitasking, the sun god remembered Horus had come to ask him to take care of his son, Set. Horus hoped to gain divine power to overthrow Set, but the sun god refused, they being his children. He was only allowed to gather sacred water from the galaxy so he could extinguish the desert fire. Once the desert fire was doused, Set's divine power would significantly weaken. Meanwhile, Set was sending all his forces to attack those pesky gods rebelling against him. He was not just driving them to the edge of the world, but planned to wipe them out. Set zoomed through the battlefield in his cool Skyclone bike and arrived at the palace. This palace was the last stand of the guardian god, Nasty, who turned out to be Set's ex-wife. Unhappy with Set's tyranny, she chose to oppose him. Just as she was spreading her wings to flee, Set grabbed her wings and yanked her back, mercilessly cutting off her beloved wings. Meanwhile, Horus and Beck, with sacred water, returned to Earth, but the sun god reclaimed his powers upon landing. Just then, Set's assassins appeared out of nowhere. Poor Beck barely had time to react before being surrounded by bull-headed guys. As the bull-headed gang was about to teach the little thief a lesson, Horus swooped in to save the day. Though not fully recovered, he was more than capable of handling these little ones. Horus leaped up and easily pierced through one bull-headed guy, and right after, two more came lunging from both sides. Unfortunately, they underestimated Horus. In the battle, he seized an enemy sword and sliced off a bull's leg. A bull-headed creature attacked from behind, but Horus spun and split him in half, using his momentum. The last one got a nasty jab to the leg, followed by a punch that snapped his neck like a twig. The bull boss immediately set Beck down and dueled with Horus, but couldn't withstand his third move and got impaled. However, bullheads are extremely resilient. Horus, caught off guard, fell into a rushing river after being ambushed. Beck quickly jumped after him, trying to wake up Horus, but ended up being swept off a cliff by a waterfall. Facing doom, Beck called out. Amid the rapid fall, Horus woke up. In a flash, Horus released his spear to slow his fall and narrowly escaped disaster. Back in the palace, the bullheads reported to Set about their failed assassination attempt. Clearly, this was not what he had in mind. While pretending to encourage them, he immediately turned around and chopped off one bullhead. With no choice left, Set had to send in his secret weapons, the black and white serpents, to take down Horus. His hidden trump card compelled the god of magic to cast a spell and pinpoint Horus' exact whereabouts. The magic god discreetly gave him a tip, and fleeing Horus caught his call. Set immediately lunged with his knife, and the magic god, disregarding his own life, swiftly took off his bracelet to escape. Casting off the bracelet, the magic god was dragged into a nightmare, ensnared by demons from the underworld who demanded his luck. After endless torment, he managed to bring back the bracelet and narrowly escaped, which accidentally sent him back to Horus' side. His goal was to aid Horus in taking down the black and white serpent sisters. Little did they know the serpent sisters had already found Horus, and he couldn't hold them off even after regaining half his power. The black and white serpents chased with jaws open. Horus grabbed Beck and sped up. Not only were the serpents fast, but they could also spew fire. After a barrage of attacks, Horus and Beck could only hide in every nook and cranny to evade the giant snakes. Beck came up with an ingenious plan. He swiftly dashed out to draw the giant snake's attention upon himself, thereby affording Horus the chance to launch a fatal strike from beneath. However, Horus was in for a surprise. The giant snakes were tougher than they looked, and his attack couldn't pierce through their hide. In a pinch, Horus cleverly used his staff to pin the serpent's throat, successfully binding it. Horus instructed Beck to lure the white snake out while he prepared for an ambush from behind. Beck sprinted into the temple with all his might, cleverly using the structure to create distance from the white snake. Hot on his heels, Horus leaped off a pillar like a springboard, landing on the serpent's body. Within moments, he bound the handler to the serpent's head, sending both tumbling down the cliff. Horus landed in a spectacularly close goal, barely catching his breath, when the crumbling temple suddenly began to collapse. Just then, the goddess of love arrived in the nick of time. The giant snake froze in place with a mere glance from her. She pulled the staff from the snake's mouth and casually remarked, "Seems like the love goddess can enthrall all single creatures." With just a stare, the mighty snake king fell to ashes. It turns out that the love goddess Hathor is Horus' wife. Their next move was to use the water of life to extinguish the desert fire in the pyramid. But to gain access to the heart of the pyramid, they were required to decipher the enigma posed by the mysterious Sphinx. To successfully get through, they had no choice but to seek the help of the ancient Egyptian god of wisdom, Thoth. The group traversed the swamp, arriving at the realm of the god of wisdom. As they entered the great hall, they were greeted by countless identical beings. Turns out Thoth only trusted himself, so he cloned many copies to do his bidding. But before Horus could say a word, Thoth denied him access. Surprisingly, quick-witted Bick used a clever tactic to convince him. The group didn't waste a moment and hurriedly made their way to the pyramid space. However, the mechanism spun around, making it impossible to identify the entrance among the moving stones. The path ahead changed randomly with the sandstorm's direction, and Beck had to gamble on luck. With one leap, he reached the opposite step and, confronted with floating steps, sprinted forward as fast as he could. In a moment of dire need, he jumped and clutched the gears, successfully shutting down the storm. At that moment, a terrifying monster emerged from underground.